Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland, and I know you're going to love this one. I have worked for days and days, spending many hours reading Chinese articles in China, collecting this artist's work. It's taken me days. Please. Go to fundraiser, PayPal, or Patreon. Make a contribution: $1, $5, $3, $10, $100, whatever it is you can do to support my many days of work to put extremely unique articles and podcasts like this together for you. Please do that now before we get started. Thank you. Meet, quote, crow and unicorn, end of quote. China's exciting young computer graphic artist who knows all about Western Empire, thus has caused a diplomatic uproar while getting Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison's knickers all wadded up in a knot. Pictured above, a montage of works by Chinese computer graphic artist Crow and Unicorn. He has a bright future, turning international diplomacy on its head with his graphic honesty about the savagery and hypocrisy of Western Empire. In case you missed it, a huge diplomatic spat was recently caused by a computer graphic CG painting posted 30 November 2020 on Chinese spokesperson Li Jianzhao's Twitter account pictured below, where he said, shocked by murder of Afghan citizens and prisoners by Australian soldiers, we strongly condemn such acts and call holding them accountable. I'm not going to go into details here because I want to introduce you to Crow and Unicorn, but Imperial Aussie soldiers got exposed by a heroic whistleblower for exterminating Afghan citizens in typical savage psychopathic fashion. Yet as I wrote in unflinching details in the China trilogy, see below, every day across Western Empire there is a My Lai genocide. It's part and parcel of the colonial protocol. Suddenly, the creator of the above image, Crow and Unicorn, who before then was unknown outside China, became a cause célèbre overnight, in country and around the world. It is my pleasure to help Crow and Unicorn become even more widely known, as the best artwork is always political and speaks truth to power, something I went whole hog on in my aforementioned China trilogy, and when we lived in Shenzhen for 3 years. Before exhibiting his paintings one by one, who is Crow and Unicorn? What do we know about him? After scouring the Chinese media, frankly, not a lot. He is enjoying being semi-anonymous, but surely now that he is getting millions of hits on national social media, we will learn more details later. Crow and Unicorn is the name of his CG company that he founded in 2009 and which he adopted as a nom de plume. He said that it has provided him with a small profit, yet a steady job. Here is his masthead on Weibo, which in China is kind of like a combination Twitter and Facebook. After the masthead, painting number 1, entitled Elegy. He did not even post his first painting until 2013, called Elegy, depicting Native Americans hopelessly outgunned by the U.S.'s genocidal Holocaust. Nevertheless, we can see that he already had a keen sense of Western Empire's true colors. Crow and Unicorn continues to coyly remain anonymous in TV interviews and with what he has divulged on Weibo. Nevertheless, we know he began painting seriously when he was 11 and now for 18 years. That would currently make him close to 30 years of age. So he was born in about 1990, meaning he was only 12 years old when he finished Elegy. How many Western painters do you know of any age, much less 12 years of age, with such an anti-colonial understanding of history? In China, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, DPRK, Vietnam, and all the other communist, socialist, anti-imperialist countries, yes, all the time. But after being, quote, airbrushed, end of quote, by Eurangloland's big lie propaganda machine, the BLPM, projectile vomit, 99% of Western mainstream art is soulless, masturbatory eye candy. Only vacuous, mind-numbing entertainment is allowed. Crow and Unicorn knows better and proudly demurs. At the end of November 2020, Crow and Unicorn excavated Elegy from the bottom of his Weibo account, having to remind his now million-plus fans that it had nothing to do with U.S. Thanksgiving, since he put it out like within a day or two of Thanksgiving, or re-put it out. All right, painting number 2, monument to commemorate the 70th anniversary of resisting the U.S. and aiding the DPRK. And for those of you who don't know, DPRK stands for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or North Korea. In fact, he was relatively unknown in China until October, when he published Monument to commemorate the 70th anniversary of resisting the U.S. and aiding the DPRK. And underneath the statue that he, or the monument that he created in his CG painting, the statue's Chinese nameplate says, "The people's heroes will always be remembered in glory." For the uninformed, November 1950 was when the Chinese People's Volunteer, CPV, Army crossed the Yalu River to the south, and with the Korean People's Army, the KPA, and USSR rearguard support, kicked the living shit out of Douglas MacArthur and his war criminal, genocidal Five Eyes. It was called, quote, United Nations Forces, but it was essentially the 5 Anglo-Saxon countries, which is why the West likes to call it the, quote, Forgotten War, and wants to keep it that way. For the victors, it has been a huge but somber celebration, given that the West exterminated about 30% of all Korean people, North and South, up to 8 million citizens, which, while literally reducing the North to wall-to-wall rubble. Thus, several war movies have come out packing Chinese and North Korean theaters, including the Chinese Diamond River. In this case, the word diamond being the name for one of Buddha's guardian deities, and also the translation of Sanskritic Vajra, V-A-J-R-A, a mythical thunderbolt. It's very appropriate, as MacArthur and company got giant Vajras shoved in their collective asses and throats. Here is what Crow and Unicorn says about his monument. The monument is for the film Diamond River. At the beginning, I prepared to shape the whole content of the film as a sculpture. Later, in the process of painting, I came to understand that what really shocked us was not only the war itself 70 years ago, but more about what the war brought us today. Therefore, another dimension was added to the picture. These days, I feel very happy to see so much attention and discussion on resisting the U.S. and assisting the DPRK, as well as the continuous emergence of works with related themes. Almost everyone is discussing the topic of resisting the U.S. and assisting the DPRK, which is unprecedented. The development of many things is like this. From a certain turning point, more and more people pay attention to something, to more and more people discussing and exploring it, to more and more excellent literary and artistic works appearing. They say that people's heroes are immortal. What is immortal? Only when heroes continue to live in films and TV programs as they do and live in people's memory can they be regarded as immortal. This is also the responsibility that literary and artistic works should shoulder, and Diamond River is an opportunity to shoulder this responsibility. Therefore, I encourage any work on this subject of resisting the United States and assisting North Korea, and I will definitely draw pictures when the upcoming films called The Coldest Gun and Nagasu Lake are released. He finishes his comments about this painting called Monument by saying, a movie is never just a film. It can have advantages and disadvantages, mature and immature. More importantly, I hope everyone can pay attention to what the film discusses so that this history will be remembered and this Chinese spirit will be passed on from generation to generation. End of comments by Crow and Unicorn about his painting Monument. Upon release of the monument, Crow and Unicorn also revealed that his grandparents were all Korean War volunteers and received patriotism education from their ancestors. When he was a child, his grandparents told him the story of, quote, beating the American devil, end of quote, which made him develop a strong sense of patriotism from an early age. In his memory, his grandparents were always happy when the Chinese team won glory for the country in international sporting events, and there were more abundant meals at home as a result. This patriotic upbringing is one reason he hopes to tell stories and convey emotions through pictures, describing himself as a staunch nationalist whose work carries a clear message. I'll say, painting number 3, Hong Kong. Earlier in June 2020, Crow and Unicorn released a painting he simply calls Hong Kong, presented below. He started adding English captions to his work, and this one tells the story. The caption reads, on June 20, 2020, the Hong Kong National Security Law went into effect. Without going into detail, you can read more about read here about what happened. You can read more here about what happened. Sometimes it looks better than it sounds better. Something I've written much about, and there's a link where you can read all my articles about Hong Kong. You can decide for yourself, but I see Hong Kong skyscrapers in the background with the national security law like a giant celebration contained, or maybe a vaccine-contained supernova exploding to blow away the CIA/MI6 agent and all of your Anglo-Land's color revolution props crashing to the lower left. Painting number 4, False Gods. Crow and Unicorn has painted 2 more Hong Kong works. First is False Gods, whose English caption says, you believe in a pretender god. In fact, a few times Crow and Unicorn has entitled it Pretender God. Here are online Chinese comments about False Gods. False Gods is a work on the theme of the anti-establishment protest movement in Hong Kong, depicting an environment that looks like ruins. A group of protesters bow down to a blonde-haired Statue of Liberty, which seems to be eating the heart of human beings in the center of the picture. It satirizes the blind obedience of the Hong Kong protesters and the hypocrisy of the United States in promoting the spirit of freedom. Those were some comments I found in Chinese. I see the Statue of Liberty raising a Molotov cocktail as a cancerous outgrowth on the beating heart/soul of all the bloody spirits among the billions of dreaded others who have been exterminated by the West throughout history, piled up in infinity in the back. And then his next Hong Kong piece, number 5, Cannon Fodder. Close on the heels of false gods is cannon fodder. Crow and Unicorn's added English caption tells the story. The caption reads, "You're just cannon fodder. Ignoble, stupid, poor," and then in quotation marks, "kids." Here are Chinese comments about cannon fodder, which I interpret amply for better meaning. An innocent child is wearing a fox's mask, thinking they are fooling the world. They are shooting a measly slingshot at a rushing oncoming train, 5,000 years of Chinese civilization, standing in the middle of the tracks to stop it. The child represents Hong Kong's deceived youth who are being manipulated by the West CIA/MI6 ongoing color revolution. The latter is represented by the adults wearing Guy Fawkes masks who are carrying umbrellas with their equally masked English bulldogs, thus calling out the UK, and all egging the child/Hong Kong to commit collective suicide. The umbrellas represent 2014's eponymously named Western Manipulated Color Revolution protests. They were called the Umbrella Revolution, another one of America's color revolutions. At the same time, with the kids italicized in the caption, Crow and Unicorn is sarcastically suggesting that they are old enough to know better. Number 6, Chinese people's 10 biggest traitors. Next is an incredibly erudite painting displaying Crow and Unicorn's excellent knowledge of modern Chinese history. He first published it in Chinese with only the title Chinese People's 10 Biggest Traitors. Later, to avoid ambiguity, he went back and added their names in ghost-like Mandarin script. They all come from China's Republican period starting in 1911 and through the Chinese Civil War, which did not end until communist liberation in 1949. They are, number 1, Zhou Fohai, who was one of the original 13 who attended the first Congress of the CPC, the Communist Party of China, in Shanghai, 1921. He left the party in 1924. He became a follower of Wang Jingwei and joined Wang's puppet government. Next is Qin Gongbo, same as the above, except he left the CPC in 1922. And Wang Jingwei was a national hero for attempting to assassinate Prince Chuen, regent and father of Puyi, the last emperor of China, and a longtime follower of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. He originally belonged to the left wing of the KMT, or the Kuomintang, which was later taken over by Chiang Kai-shek, and was thought to be Dr. Sun's successor. He later gave in to Chiang Kai-shek and became a great prosecutor of the communists. Wang became China's most famous quisling when he led a puppet government for the Japanese occupation. How the great have fallen. Next is Chen Bijun, was the wife of Wang Jingwei. She refused to admit guilt and died in prison. Then Liang Hongzhi, an opportunist usually aligned with the warlords of Japan. And then the next 3, Wang Kemin, Wang Yitang, Zhang Jinghui, are the same as Liang Hongzhi, who they worked with the warlords in Japan against the communist revolution. Then there's Chu Min-yi, an internationally educated nationalist who joined KMT after the death of Dr. Sun. He was the brother-in-law of Wang Jingwei. His wife was Wang's half-sister. Unfortunately, following Wang's road to perdition. Then, last but not least, Fu Xiaoan, an opportunist hopping beds from Shanghai banking to Beijing warlords, joining Wang Jingwei's puppet government and playing double spy. he got assassinated for his troubles. I would like to thank author Wei Ling Chua, who sent me the name list since the Chinese was too chicken scratch for me to read clearly, and then author Peter Mann, who further provided the brief history of each trader and hyperlinks for further study, as I just read above. Thank you, comrades Chua and Mann. Number 7, painting number 7, Coronation of the Jester. The next painting is much more oblique in its meaning and has been called simply Coronation, or more completely, Coronation of the Jester. All we have to go on is Crow and Unicorn's mysterious comment that this painting is dedicated to, quote, China's most influential writer. Wow, who could that be? Historically, at least in the modern sense, it would be Mao Zedong, today's President Xi Jinping, or Professor Jean E. Nan. However, as we have seen, Crow and Unicorn has a delicious sense of sarcasm and biting satire. This work is clearly pointed in that direction, thereby signifying someone who is no friend of free China. It seems to me he is mocking some famous Chinese writer who has sold out to the West. The military man on the throne represents the West. The writer Jester has caused much harm / bloodshed or has massacred the truth. With all the cameras behind, this denotes they were made famous as a result. The Jester / author is getting a dog collar put on his neck for an imperial job well done. Unless Crow and Unicorn shows his hand, we'll probably never know, but it could be any number of scar literature writers based in the West like Zheng Chang, Li Zhisui, or Frank Dicotter, all of whom I have cited and written about. Peter Mann agreed with me, adding that, quote, most influential, end of quote, could be ironic. The crown / collar suggests the writer who kills the book with a dagger is a jester / liar, because he has a long nose, who has received an award. Perhaps it is Liu Xiaobo, but if the writer is still alive, then maybe Gao Xingjian. If the writer still lives in China, then I have no idea. Thereafter, when reading the Chinese again, I realized that Crow and Unicorn could have meant China's most influential writers with an S, meaning more than one, since in Mandarin there is no plural form for nouns. Unless specified, it can be both. Thus, possibly the Jester collectively represents all of Urango Land's many scar literature writers. Painting number 8, Wrath of the King of Sleep. The next painting tells you all you need to know about U.S. politics. Democrat Joe Biden, Tweedledee, is no different than Republican Donald Trump, Tweedledum. This one is entitled Wrath of the King of Sleep, and in fact, Crow and Unicorn did 3 telescoping shots out to the full version. Obviously, King of Sleep is a jab at Joe Biden's manifest senility. As well, it doesn't matter who is in power in the U.S., it's the global capitalist gangster bankster war party whose leaders are demonic psychopaths. They control an army of imperial cannibal zombies, which is devouring humanity. The zombie on the left mid-perspective with the computer keyboard symbolizes the West's BLPM techno-feudalism. Even the zombies could be all the Uranglos or Uranglo-landers who are being killed by the World Economic Forum's COVID Great Reset. The zombie in the front has 2 Chinese characters on its forehead. The second one doesn't mean anything, but Wei Ling Chua thinks it's stylized for zhi, which then makes gongzhi, which literally means public intellectual. However, it is often used pejoratively for someone who doesn't know their arse from a hole in the ground, yet acts like a big know-it-all. Where do you want to start? Take your pick. Painting number 9, Respect Breathing. The next painting is pretty obvious if you know about the death of George Floyd in the U.S. earlier this year, who was choked to death in broad daylight in Minnesota when a cop suffocated him with the knee to his neck for almost 9 minutes. Crow and Unicorn has named it variously, but seems to have settled on Respect Breathing, with the English caption, "Floyd's, can you breathe?" What's interesting is that Crow and Unicorn has made it a wide-angle shot overlooking the wider public. Thus, it can be taken as a metaphor for all of humanity needing to be treated with dignity and respect by their governments, especially since he wrote Floyd's with an S plural in the English caption. Painting number 10, White House Painter. Crow and Unicorn created a brilliant satirical work in White House Painter. It depicts U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in the White House Oval Office trying to cover up a massive coronavirus by painting it with the Chinese flag, while the president is trying to hold off the press at the door, saying, "Come on, Mike, I'm losing control." It would appear Trump was helping Pompeo paint the coronavirus, since it looks like he set down the red paint pan on the floor before facing the cameras. On President Trump's desk are 2 bottles of Clorox, taking a swipe at his claiming coronavirus could be killed by injecting disinfectants. It looks like Trump is trying to make face masks out of paper towels. The cardboard box with stars cut out of the sides is to paint the gold stars on the Chinese flag. And the battery-operated good luck cat, the kind that waves in rear windows and Chinese shop fronts, is a droll touch. Number 11, herd immunity. Herd immunity is a striking blend of historical Rome with an imperial coliseum full of gladiators who are sporting medieval death masks. They are proceeding to kill innocent people, including an old man and a younger blonde woman. All the sacrifices seen are Westerners. Look closely, and that's Boris Johnson in the foreground, who supposedly caught COVID-19. In that case, is he also on the dais with Trump and Canada's Justin Trudeau, with their flags overhead? The 3 on the left are all giving the imperial thumbs down to order the gladiators to not spare their victims. Hard to say who the 2 female-looking members are with them. Above the towering royal dais, we mentioned the flags of Britain, the USA, and Canada. There is a United Kingdom fascism flag draped below. This is brilliant. Off to the left is another flag with fascist motifs. The standing leaders are surrounded by imperial fascist symbols. The English caption reads, herd immunity, a massacre permitted by the state. Number 12, Peace Teacher. Now we are getting to the celebrated painting Crow and Unicorn did the end of November 2020 concerning the Aussie massacre in Afghanistan, which he called Peace Teacher. It depicts an Australian soldier kneeling with an Afghan child cradled in its arms. The child's head is covered with part of the Australian flag. Below you can see one of their feet sticking out next to the symbolic sacrificial lamb that they are holding in their arms. Notice what appears to be a demonic grin on the exterminator's face while he is slitting the child's throat with a knife as blood is starting to gush out. In the background is the rest of the Australian flag covering all the victims of the massacres. It looks like the Aussie flag is overwhelming Afghanistan, with the latter's flag underneath almost devoured. Interestingly, the flag of Afghanistan is composed of puzzle pieces, maybe an enigma that Western Empire can't figure out, or put together since the West has been invading and trying to occupy the country since Alexander in 4th century BC. This helps explain why the Afghan flag has 3 colors. Black depicts the country's colonial past, red is the blood of those who fought for independence, and green is considered a future of hope and prosperity and/or Islam. The English caption reads, "Don't be afraid. We are coming to bring you peace." Here is the background from Chinese media. Crow and Unicorn said in late November he saw the overseas media coverage of the Australian troops in Afghanistan killing civilians. And he wrote, especially the cutthroat way they killed a 14-year-old Afghan boy whose details gave me the shivers. I felt extremely full of fear and anger. This should not appear in the modern civilization of human society. More about the background according to the Chinese media that I read about this painting. Australia has had troops in Afghanistan as part of a U.S.-led coalition since the overthrow of the Taliban in 2002. On November 19th, the Australian Defence Force released a shocking report showing that 25 active and former Special Forces soldiers were involved in 23 unlawful killings in Afghanistan and covered up the crimes during their time in country. In these incidents, a total of 39 innocent civilians and captives were killed, and 2 others were ill-treated. The head of Australia's Defence Forces, Angus Campbell, has apologized unreservedly to the Afghan people for the actions of his soldiers and apologized to the Australian public for war crimes. Of course, the only reason they got caught is a military defense lawyer was a whistleblower, and they have now imprisoned him, and he is now joining Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning for supposedly revealing state secrets. Crow and Unicorn created the first painting reflecting the killing behavior of Australian soldiers, which he drew the night and day of November 22nd and 23rd. However, he did not create the work according to the actual scene, but he said, "I rearranged many real elements of this tragic event by means of metaphor." I'll say. The final version was released on 24 November 2020, where it went viral all over Chinese social media. Chinese diplomat Li Jianzhao added it to his scathing, truth-telling tweet on the 30th, shown above. All hell broke loose with Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and other cabinet members making pompous fools of themselves in front of the whole world, stating that it was a, quote, fake photo, and angrily demanded an apology. Really? Number 13, the painting is entitled Apologize to Morrison. The next day, Crow and Unicorn quickly released a new work called Apologize to Morrison with the one-word English caption, Apologize! In a brilliant display of metaphor, it shows Crow and Unicorn as a young Chinese boy dressed in red and starting a painting which also happens to be in red. The whole Western BLPM is focused on what he is doing. He's their red bullseye. This while Morrison is screaming and pointing all the MSM journalists towards Crow and Unicorn. Morrison is using the Australian flag to cover up all the dead bodies of Australia's imperial wars, which are also being perpetrated by Eranglo land across the global horizon in the background. At the same time, Crow and Unicorn stated the following on his Weibo account when he released this painting. Morrison questioned whether my painting was a fake, and some foreign users said it was photoshopped. I would say that their focus should not be on whether it's a real image or a creative work, but on the genocidal event itself. Wow. Talk about cutting to the quick. Take that, Western Empire. Crow and Unicorn has only been actively doing political painting since 2019, I guess, except for Elegy from 2013, when the first one I showed you. So he has a long, illustrious career ahead of himself. He said he started with this angle because, and I quote, Crow and Unicorn, Western popular art is used to attacking other countries, and there is little that can be done in China to counter it. Western forces are increasingly attacking our country. In my opinion, there are no foreign works of literature and art, at least paintings, which are totally worthless. That's why I wanted to respond in kind with these. End of his quote. Clearly, most of Western Empire has not learned a damn thing. Here is what one Aussie newspaper said. Crow and Unicorn's art is a piece of juvenile garbage. From a lowly spokesman, that would be Li Jianzhao, the diplomat, who was rewarded out of all proportion by being taken very seriously at the highest possible level of Australian leadership. End of quote from a major Aussie newspaper. It's safe to say that many more billions of dreaded others will continue to be genocidally exterminated at the hands of Western Empire until it finally collapses. On his Weibo account, Crow and Unicorn earlier described himself as, quote, a super irritating, closeted political painter and wolf warrior painter. Well, it sure looks like he stepped out of the closet, and let's hope he keeps up his wolf warrior, anti-imperialist painting for a long time to help achieve your Anglo-land's colonial implosion. Further, he has stated that, and this I read a bunch of different Chinese articles and pulled out a number of quotes to make it into a coherent whole. Many painters, this is Crow and Unicorn talking. Many painters in China think that works should not be offensive, and artistic work should be pure and free from impurities. Therefore, there may be many painters whose paintings are better than mine and whose appeal is stronger than mine, but they will not do so. Nonetheless, I think conveying and exporting ideology is exactly one of the responsibilities of artworks and artists. So I decided to start doing it, hoping that more artists would be able to make good use of their skills to do something for the motherland and the people. After being smeared, Chinese cultural creators always seem to feel obliged to explain themselves. Instead, they need to fight back. We artists all need to transmit and export ideology, especially during this critical period when the West uses the power of discourse to press closer and closer. Therefore, we need more literary and artistic works that convey the will of the country and the people. Thus, I encouraged other artists who did not dare to create similar themes, and I will continue to do my best to help them bite out some space so that more patriotic young people have no fear to express their views openly. I argue that Chinese cultural exporters should not just be Chinese comic superheroes. China does not have the individualism and heroism of the United States. Chinese values are diametrically opposed to American values, and we should not pander to American values. The United States believes that, quote, I can only be good if I'm good as an individual, end of quote. But our values are that the collective is better than the individual, and the individual shares the collective honor and achievement. He closes out by saying, for our international critics, we will not be affected by these negative comments, and we will continue to export. Introspection in get a load of this last line. Introspection in times of peace and killing enemies in times of danger are the historical mission of artists. Wow, geez Louise, that last line says it all. May an inspired revolutionary army of crows and unicorns put paint to canvas to educate and inform all of humanity about the genocidal savagery and grotesque hypocrisy of Western Empire's worldwide Wehrmacht and gangster-bankster capitalism. In closing, I am honored to present this online exhibition of Crow and Unicorn's fabulous political computer graphic paintings. I love his imaginative satire, sarcasm, exaggerated themes, and bold colors, yet with refined brushstrokes in the details. He is a true people's patriot and deserves all the celebrity he is garnering. Not surprisingly, being a socialist artist, he's not in it for the money, but I think many Chinese will now hire him for a variety of CG projects, and he deserves every bit of it, including financial success. In any case, Crow and Unicorn has announced, and this is what he said, the copyright of these 12 political illustrations, 13 including elegy, is completely open. You can take whatever you want and then paint and distribute them. And then to end this online artist exhibition, there's a photo of Crow and Unicorn, and the caption reads, Crow and Unicorn talking about his recent political CG paintings on a Chinese TV talk show. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rising Radio Sinoland. Again, this is, if you appreciated the work I do, $1, $2, $5, $100, whatever you can contribute, please go to PayPal, Patreon, and fundraiser, and make support my work. Thank you. Signing out.